Welcome back to the shop. On today's episode, we're going to rebuild this Buffalo number 15 drill press. As you can see, it's a little rough and missing a few parts. The wiring needs to be rebuilt. I need to add a switch here. This is just from Amazon. And the worst part about the drill press is the saddle for the table is broken. Really broken. I briefly considered replacing the saddle from an eBay part, or I'm trying to repair it, but in the end I think I'm just going to use some parts I have lying around the shop. And really there's only two challenges to this. It's making sure this in-ear diameter is the same as the outside diameter of the column, and making sure everything's nice and straight and square to the chuck. When machining this pipe, I thought to leave a little bit of a raised edge at either end, so it only clamps at the top and bottom. This will allow it to slide over the column a little bit easier. The larger diameter of this hole saw will give me a little bit of a clearance when I'm attaching this to the pipe, so when I weld in, I'll just fill in the little bit of clearance left here. And also, if I don't get the hole saw exactly centered on this pipe, it'll allow me to adjust for that later. So here you can see just the little bit of clearance I have, and the weld will fill that in. And it's like a fillet weld, so it'll be a little bit stronger in the end. So I've just marked off the holes to the original saddle, and I'll drill those out so everything kind of matches the original machine surfaces. Here I'm reusing the original bolt that held the table to the saddle, and I'm just going to TIG weld that bolt into place. It's good practice for me too, because I'm just learning to TIG weld. I maybe only have 10 hours on the machine. This is just cold rolled steel, and I'm going to use it as the pinch clamps for the pipe. Got to get that hole the same size as the bolt so it slides through. And we're just going to tack this up and get some more practice TIG welding. I'm always torn if I should MIG weld or TIG weld. TIG welding for me is just, it's a struggle right now. And the welds don't turn out great. It takes maybe 5 times as long. And then sometimes I just wish I MIG welded it and it would look nicer and I'd be happier and I'd be able to show it off. But I'm learning, right? A little filing here just to clean up that groove I cut with the angle grinder. It'll just look a little nicer in the end. Once I get all this scale and rust off, I'll probably use a little bit of whey oil to keep this shiny and nice, and so it doesn't end up like it is right now. The original intention was to sandblast everything, but it really just took too long. So I ended up wire brushing and using a bit of acetone to clean down the parts. This is this Tractor Supply enamel. I find it works really well for tools that you're going to be using and not showing off. Each part got about 2 or 3 coats of enamel paint, and I left it to dry for about a week before reassembling. The really sad part about this wiring here, you can see the switch, is this came out of a school. So some school kids were using a household switch to turn on and off drill press. So I'll be replacing that. And for $80 I have into this machine, it really won't matter if I spend $15 on a switch, buy some bearings, and a couple cans of paint. Maybe a new belt too. Now, I've already tested that motor, so I know that motor works. It's just going to get a quick clean up, and I'll paint it, so we'll be all set. As you can hear, these bearings are just completely shot. So I'll replace those with a pair I found on eBay, new old stock. I didn't spend too much money. And a little bit of tool block here, I'll coat all the hardware. Once I get these parts all coated with the tool block, I'll wash it off with hot water and coat it with oil. Here's the head going back on. And I'll tighten down the head support collar. I'm using a little bit of grease on the pilot feed lever. But I'll probably clean most of that off and use a spindle oil later on. Just want to make sure it's running smoothly there. This is a real pain in the ass to get the tension just right. I tend to hold it with the Allen key just enough, and I can tighten it up by turning the knob back one turn. I'm using my tram gauges to make sure this table is perfectly parallel to the chuck, and using a little floor jack to raise up the table just slightly. Once I get where I want it, I'll tack it in place. And I can finish TIG welding it and get some more practice in. I'm using this plumb bob to center the chuck to the base. This way I can keep everything in line before I tighten up the column bolts. And voila, number 15 drill, 1961, brand new. Let's clean off a little bit of that green paint. Tighten up the motor mounts, put the motor back on. A fresh belt. Right on. And a new switch. It's a safety switch, so if the power gets interrupted, the drill won't come back on. And a final tram for the table. I'll mark the 0 point back here at the saddle and add a little paint so I can see it a little bit better. Should have used a little thicker paint. I think I'll get some model paint later. I like to have a large hole in the center of the table so I can drill through. A lot of times I just spot drill, so that's what I want in a drill press. I'm gonna make up a key holder so I don't lose my key. You could probably use a chain or something like that. I don't like to use chains. I'd rather have it just a holder. Just using some flat stock here. Well, there you have it, my brand new 1961 Buffalo drill press. It's a working tool, so it's not restored 100%, but it'll work great for me. And I'm happy to have it in my shop. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe.